participate and be in full voice of everything that's going on today. We want to make sure that we're creating a safe space for everybody. We want to make sure that we are here to open up the space for the panel in terms of keeping a good, keep your heart in the space and making sure that we respect and are kind to each other. So basically our retreat series are for emerging and established Native women entrepreneurs who want to grow their business and network with others in their community. But most of all, these retreats are for you during this time of uncertainty. We want to make sure that we're here for our community and for all the Native women who are going through such a, transformation process themselves, and know that we are here as your cheerleaders, making sure that you are not alone, because you're not. Native Women Lead wants to acknowledge the unprecedented times and challenges Native women, Native communities face. And we also want to offer self-care tools alongside practical business knowledge to help people navigate during these uncertain times. And we also would like to uplift matriarchal systems with entrepreneurial models that support the health and well-being of tribal communities. And this is important because Native women are often the backbones of our nations and are relied upon to support the varying needs of families and communities. We'd like to extend our gratitude to New Mexico Indian Affairs Department for their support for this series and Indigenous women entrepreneurs. Without them, we would not be able to go forward with this retreat series. So we thank you so much for your support and for everyone out there that continues to support Native Women Lead. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Ms. Jennifer Lujan, who is from Pueblo of Isleta, who's going to be introducing the wonderful co-founders that we all have been working with. And she is our event coordinator and has been very inspiring to me on seeing her grow and develop her own entrepreneurial path. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce her. Thank you everybody for being here.
Yes, thank you, Kim. I really appreciate that. It really has been an honor to work with you all. So thank you with that. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Lujan. I'm from Isleta Pueblo, as well as Turtle Mountain, Chippewa. As Kim said, this is our 5th retreat, and I'm so honored to work with and introduce these amazing Indigenous leaders behind the magic. Today, NWL brings us together to talk about nourishment, as these co-founders work to empower one another and Native women entrepreneurs, recognizing that they are the backbones of their communities and families. It's easy to become unbalanced, especially as we pivot our businesses and leadership during these turbulent times. We come together for this retreat to learn about how we nourish ourselves and our businesses to be sustainable so that we can continue dreaming and nourishing our communities. So with that, thank you co-founders for providing a platform to discuss how to nourish ourselves alongside with our businesses. The organizing team of co-founders are Kim Gleason of Navajo Nation, Jamie Glachet of Navajo, White Mountain Apache, and Kiowa Nations, Alicia Ortega of Santa Clara and Pojoaque Pueblos, Stephanie Poston of the Pueblo of Sandia, Vanessa Roanhorse of Navajo Nation, and last but not least, Jaclyn Roessel of Navajo Nation. Okwamiam, stay strong, sisters, and Harkem. Thank you.
So thank you all so much for joining us. Jaclyn Roessel and Shia Tachi Nimashla Kia Ani Bashashin, Todokoje Dashache, Do Belugane Dashanella, Lokuchikai Dosana Canada Nasha. It's such an honor to be here with you all. I am calling in from the homelands of the Tamayame people in what is known today as New Mexico. I am very honored to be a co-founder of Native Women Lead, and am also just really excited about our retreat today, and the panelists that we have whose work I've long admired. It is such a phenomenal gift to be able to be joining you all week after week. And it really, I think for our intention setting for this morning, I really just want to offer everyone a grounding of just taking a few breaths together. I think in this moment of the impact that the COVID pandemic is having on our people and just everyone around the world, one of the things is that just the impact that that has on our breathing and our breath, and what a gift it is when we think about the connection to the Black Lives Matter uprising, and the call out of I can't breathe. It's such a powerful reminder to our humanity, our interconnectivity between people, nations, and relatives near and far, to be able to unite in breath, and give breath to each other and blessings. So whether you want to turn your video off or close your eyes, I would come to a comfortable and relaxed kind of position, and just center, breathe the first breath, just your natural breath. Listen as the air moves into your mouth. Feel and recognize the way that it touches against the back of your throat and expands into your lungs. And as you exhale that breath, on the next inhale, I want you to reach deeper. So pulling power and medicine from the earth into your body and into your vessel, giving gratitude for all that it does for you today and every day. Feel a little stretch as that breath kind of expands your belly. And exhale, an appreciation. And then breathe in one more time together. Inhale. Just appreciation and grounding for coming into this space. And then exhale. It's such beautiful medicine to be in community with each other and to connect in uniting our breaths in this moment in time. So thank you all for taking that moment. And as mentioned, we really want this space and this time to be a place where we are able to exhale, breathe in the company, this opportunity to be able to nourish ourselves. And as today we're talking about nourishment, I am so honored to be able to introduce this session. We have three amazing panelists that are joining us this morning. They are incredible individuals who two of which I've been very fortunate to know and just share in space and time with. But I first want to introduce Chelsey Luger, who's Anishinaabe and Lakota. Chelsey is a writer, journalist, trainer for Native Wellness Institute, and co-founder of Well for Culture, an Indigenous wellness initiative. She is a graduate of Dartmouth College and Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism, and is currently based in Phoenix, Arizona, where she lives with her husband, Bosch, and 2-year-old daughter, Aloe. And Chelsey just is personally just a beautiful example of someone who brings their role of motherhood into their work and community, and is inspiring to me as another mama. It means so much that she sets this example of just decolonizing this path of motherhood for other Indigenous women. And so I'm so honored that she's here to share with us today. I also want to introduce Bleu Adams, who title doesn't include badass, but should. Bleu is Mandan Hidatsa and Dene, based in Provo, Utah. Bleu is an entrepreneur and a consultant at indigihub.org, an Indigenous co-working space, startup incubator, and entrepreneurial think tank working to build economically secure, self-reliant, and self-sufficient Indigenous communities. Bleu also acts as a facilitator at Blackbird Brunch, a restaurant co-working space and concept accelerator. Her current position as interim chair for Native Women Entrepreneurs of Arizona is an integral part of her work in supporting Native women in their business journey. She really is a entrepreneur who wears so many different roles with her heart on her sleeve, and is also doing incredible COVID response for our people as well. And so it's really amazing. I think, Bleu, you mentioned that you've just recently expanded to serve 60 different communities, which is just its own hard work and necessary need in this crisis that we're all facing. So thank you. Chef Andrea Murdoch is Andean native from Venezuela and has created one of the most unique dining experiences in Denver. Her specialty is elevated Indigenous cuisine, utilizing her classic training, ancestral knowledge, creativity, and passion. There is great respect for ingredients and immense pride and courage when telling our stories through food. Allow Andrea to just envelope all of us today in sharing about her concept and business for Directions Cuisine, and sharing about her perspective and just the way that she garners and gathers nourishment for herself and her communities. And so it's with such immense gratitude on behalf of all the Native Women League co-founders that I welcome you to our virtual retreat space. So thank you so much for joining us. Bleu, Chelsey, and Andrea, thank you three for joining us. I'm so excited that you're able to be here. And I think so what our format today, just to let everyone know, is we're gonna have, we prepared some questions just so that you can hear from each panelist in our time together today. And then what we're going to do is you are more than welcome to then begin to share your own questions too, whether that's in the chat or in the Q&A feature, is that right? Or no, in the chat. And then we'll be able, with Jen's help, to kind of lift up questions as they're asked. So, all right. I'm so excited and have been talking really fast. But first, like the first question that I'd love for you all to just share is, what is nourishing you most in your work at this moment?
For me, it's the ability to do community work while I'm still running my business. I think a lot of people feel like they have to choose one or the other, and to be able to continue to run my business, albeit in a slightly different manner, and keeping that afloat and keeping the Indigenous knowledge going in my respective area of the world, but also, prepping community meals, free community meals for the underserved Westward neighborhood, which is a Latino neighborhood in Denver. Like, that feels really good. Even if I spend 5 days on my business or 7 days on my business, I still have 2 days out of the week where I'm cooking and contributing. And a lot of these meals are going to families who have lost, 2 of their 3 jobs or all of their jobs, whatever the situation may be. And they're also going to elders, folks who still are not fully comfortable, even with masks and gloves, going to the grocery store. And for me, it's remembering that not everyone has people, if my parents were here, I'd be going to the grocery store for them. I know that there are people who don't have that opportunity or those kind of support systems. So knowing that I'm spending 2 days a week making community meals for people who really, truly appreciate it, and they send emails to the nonprofit to that end, that's a good feeling, and that's something that helps keep me going in the midst of all of the crazy that's happening right now.
Okay, I just wanted to say real quick that I want to echo Andrea's sentiment and say that I feel lucky to be working in my community already and to have the opportunity to support them through supplying PPE and supplies. and continue my business has been a great opportunity for me. And it's not the best situation to be in, but having built that community and having been able to rely on that community has been saving us. So I'm very appreciative for the people that have supported us over the years and are continuing to support us, because without them, we would have closed a few months ago. Just not having any traditional revenue, but being able to shift and raise funds to support another effort that is helping people stay safe and healthy. I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, and I would say, can everyone hear me? But I'm kind of have to talk quiet. My baby's sleeping on me right now. But I guess being able to spend more time grounded at home with my family. You know, our work is very, very travel heavy. We travel all over the United States and Canada offering workshops on wellness. And so, you know, and we take our baby with us everywhere we go. And that can get to be really exhausting. And I don't think that I realized how exhausting it was until we stopped doing it. And I kind of saw how much we all needed the rest from that. And we needed to let our spirits catch up to us. And so, and like right now, we were in Arizona for the first part where we live of the pandemic, but we relocated up here to North Dakota, and we're staying at my mom's house, which is really nice. And so just rerouting and being connected with family more so than we have been in a really long time has been kind of the bright spot in this challenging pandemic.
Well, for sharing. In our kind of pre-call, one of the things that we talked about really was the challenges, right? The challenges that are very much real in this moment. And so I'm curious, like, as we again like set just like the frame so people can kind of understand where you are and like your businesses in this moment, like, can you share about a recent pivot or shift you have made in your work to respond like to this moment? Like, and it can be like pandemic specific or just kind of similar to like Chelsey talking about like exhaustion, just how this has caused you to maybe move in a different way.
So for 4 Directions, you know, in the intro, you mentioned that, you know, we specialize in elevated Indigenous cuisine. And so as a catering company, the end goal was to eventually have this, you know, phenomenal prefix menu, fine dining, Indigenous experience, because that's not what people think that this cuisine is or could ever hope to be. And so as difficult as it was, that idea was put on the back burner, and we pivoted to basically a slightly elevated, like grab and go style menu. So all of the, you know, beautifully plated prefix menus and stuff like that turned into, what's it going to cost me to produce soups by the quart, sauces by the pint, doing meal packages even for delivery. And that was incredibly popular, especially when everything first was shut down, to have different meal options, including both vegan and vegetarian and meat options. And so the creativity was still there, but everything had to go into boxes and quart and pint containers. So there was definitely a huge pivot there to go from this high-end business model in terms of the, you know, how the food was presented, to a much more casual grab and go. And the education is still there, especially when, you know, you're justifying your pricing and explaining, well, if we're getting tepary beans from Ramona Farms, you know, it's $6.99 a pound. It's not $1.99 a pound for, you know, the black beans in the bulk bin at, you know, your local grocery store. So there are things that are still very similar, like that educational component, you know, and the sharing of Indigenous knowledge and culture and information. But in terms of how we're executing the catering business, we're obviously not being booked for big weddings and seminars and things like that anymore, team building activities, but we are getting a lot of local support, especially with the small like culinary collective that a bunch of us put together. We're all Latinx owned businesses. There's about 6 of us, all with different concepts, and people are flooding the collective website, fortunately, and saying, yes, I'll get this one thing from Four Direction, this one thing from, you know, another business. And people really are making the effort to spend their money locally. And that is making a huge difference for small and micro businesses that do not have the resources that bigger business has. So we've come together as a collective and we're sharing resources, and it's really paying off. And it has kept pretty much all of us alive during all of this.
So for us, it's definitely been a shift to digital, and you know, everything is happening just like this retreat over Zoom or over Facebook Live or whatever it may be, and it's been a lot of video production for us as well, and staying more engaged with our social media and our podcast audience, and putting that at the forefront, as opposed to before, when our in-person work was our like priority. So so that's been the biggest shift for us. And of course there's benefits and setbacks for that model. The benefit being, like I said, that we are more grounded as a family, but the and then I think the other thing too is it's nice that a lot of this content is being offered for free for different audiences. So I would imagine that we're engaging with you know, a different audience than what we typically would, and having just a slightly different reach, which is good. But the negative being, of course, we just miss that in-person, you know, contact, which is always brings a different type of energy. So we do really miss, you know, traveling to different lands and seeing different people in person. But it's been good to see what can be done digitally as well.
So right now, we're in a couple of unique positions with our businesses. Blackbird, which is our restaurant co-working space, we were sharing with several chefs, but like Andrea expressed, it's hard to translate our menu into to-go, and a to-go menu. It's just the expense for it for us, because we use all compostable and different products for to-go, because we don't have any recycling facilities on the Navajo Nation. We're really aware of that, and we try to provide that, but it's really expensive. And when you're asking a community that's already, you know, a lot of people have lost their jobs, have lost their livelihood, it'd be hard to ask for them to pay for that expense. So it made more sense to offer the space to another restaurant that couldn't open. Their space is completely shut down. So that's what we did. Scott's Food Stand is operating at Blackbird Brunch right now, 3 days a week. And that's great, because it's great that we could share our resources. As far as House of Fry Bread that we're opening in Provo, we hadn't even opened. And now we have to think about, how do you open during a pandemic? What's the grand opening going to look like? And our margins are way off because of the restrictions. We lost a third of our seating. So we took that idea of sharing resources, and we're building out 2 other kiosks for different companies to use. And that will help share our costs as far as rent and utilities. So really being creative and finding ways to pivot and shift during this time is actually kind of coming naturally, because I'd been doing that work previous. So that's one of the ways. And then initially when we got shut down, because Navajo Nation went into curfew early on, we're in about almost our third month, we decided to try to support the community by providing sanitizer, face shields, face masks, etc. And I was lucky enough to partner with a group and act as their warehouse. So we've been getting about 20,000 face shields through there, about 10,000 K95 masks. And because of that, they were willing to pay a portion of the rent. So again, there's a creative solution to a problem with how am I going to pay my bills? I don't have any revenue coming in right now through the restaurants, etc. So those are just a couple of ways we've been able to survive and are continuing to survive, and our concepts are still evolving. We had an opening date on Navajo of June 15th, just about ready to do the marketing, and now we're shut down for another 2, maybe 3 weeks. So there's not a lot of permanence right now or stability. So if any of us as entrepreneurs are going to survive, we're going to have to get really creative and depend on our networks and depend on our communities.
Thank you everyone for sharing. I think each one of you have great examples of just the specific responses and really innovations that you are making to continue the work that you're doing. One of my good friends, Kristen Dorsey, would say our tradition as Indigenous people is innovation. And so being able to be in that response to what is happening around us, it's helpful in good times, but it's also something that is really part of our ability to mobilize in times that are trying, and unique times like this demand that. So thank you so much for that. We have a great group of panelists here that really span wellness in terms of how we feed ourselves, and nourishment of how we take care of ourselves, but also wellness from the perspective of having Chelsey be a representative on behalf of welfare culture. That idea of taking care of ourselves now is also something that's really important. I love their name of their initiative, being well for our culture, be welfare culture. And I think that that is also a demand in this moment in time, and ways that we can reclaim our wellness and really reclaim that nourishment that we give ourselves. So I want to kind of take this on is, prior to COVID-19, what was the worst business decision you made, and how did you rectify it?
I can take that one because I made a really, I don't know if it was a bad decision on my part, but I guess placing trust in somebody. I partnered on one of my businesses without doing enough due diligence, meaning I knew the person from the community. On paper, he seemed great, seemed very knowledgeable. It looked like we could grow and scale. We were looking at franchising one of my businesses, entered into a partnership, and immediately regretted it. And so then I started to do my due diligence and research and call references, etc. And 2 years later, we still haven't resolved our initial partnership, where he's not providing his end of the bargain. So I had to figure out how to move on. It's a concept that I loved, but it was starting to affect my other businesses. So what I eventually did was I signed my ownership over to my lawyer, and my lawyer is pursuing that for me in the background. So it's something I don't have to think about. I won't get my initial investment back probably, but it was pretty small. I was comfortable with it. But moving forward, understanding that it's okay to not just trust at that level. Okay, we're acquaintances, we know each other from the community, everybody says he's a good guy. Don't stop there. Go back through records. A lot of records are public. after going back through public records, found out that he had liens on some of the other businesses through tax records, some employment issues through court records, and really doing good business. That's what good business is. The more research you do, the better off you'll be in the end. So that was a hard lesson for me, and I should have learned that a few years ago. But now I'm really adamant about who I choose to do business with.
Thank you, Bleu. I think one of the things in being in in just like community, like with you, I think that just the way that you're willing to share the importance of protecting our intellectual property, especially like as Indigenous women, it's really important and necessary to think about that, like in the work that we're doing. So not just being compensated for it, but really thinking with like foresight and like, you know, future about like the ideas that we have and how we continue to like move in protection like of them, I think is really important. And I thank you so much for always continuing to bring that reminder like into the spaces that we share.
I think for me, I didn't really view it as a misstep. I think I was experiencing what a lot of people were experiencing, especially entrepreneurs, which was, what the heck do I do? You know, like we can go through all of the training in the world, and we can have 50 years of experience in this business, but absolutely no one had a game plan for this. Like when you have thin profit margins as a restaurant or any food business to start with, it's like, what do you do when you're shut down for a month? Like most people don't have those reserves. We're not sitting on a whole bunch of cash in the bank. That's part of the reason why we do what we do. It's just not that kind of industry. So for an overnight decision to be, everything's being shut down, stay at home, we'll let you know when you can make any sort of movement, that's really difficult. So for me, it was just wrapping my head around what was happening, period. And seeing all the emails come through about, well, because of this, our event's canceled, which means we don't need you, which means we're not sending you a check. Yeah. So yeah, for me, it was just, taking a week or two to kind of sit with trying to figure out what was going on. What do you do next? And, I couldn't even think of, I'll call such and such, I'll call this person who's been in the business for longer than me and they'll know what to do. There was no one with information as to what to do.
I don't necessarily have a glaring business mistake that we've made, but and I think part of the reason is that we don't necessarily view ourselves as like a for-profit business. We view ourselves more as a grassroots initiative, and we do a lot of nonprofit partnering. So it's very much less of a structured business than what the other two women on the panel are running. But I would say we definitely have had big learning experiences, and one of those is recognizing our own value as consultants. And oh, hi baby. And on one hand, I think it's good that we started out like super humble in our fees and stuff, because we have learned a lot and improved a lot since then, since we launched in 2014. So I think we have legitimately increased in value. But on the other hand, I think we probably were actually undervaluing ourselves from the beginning. And so it's been interesting, I guess I still don't fully have my head wrapped around, whether I'm undervaluing or not. We do try to be fair too, and we work with a lot of people that don't, a lot of organizations that don't necessarily have the most massive budget, but yeah, so it's just been really interesting in that learning experience of like fair pricing and valuing ourselves appropriately.
Another question from Maria. What have you found to be the best form of self-care for you during these challenging times?
You know, we always say movement is medicine. And so that's been a big one, is just, I would say there's a part of me that's like been hard on myself ever since being a mom, in that I haven't been like the fitness person I used to be. Because I do spend so much of my physical energy like breastfeeding a 2.5-year-old and who's like more than half my height, and like, you know, carrying her around and stuff. So I think for me, it's been like still value, like recognizing the value also of stillness and in alternative forms of movement that aren't necessarily like pumping iron, going to the gym, but like truly like recognizing and appreciating the strength that is required for motherhood and all that. So self-care for me has been like coming into ownership of that concept and living it. Like Jaclyn, what you offered in the beginning of this panel, the breath, breathing, mindfulness, that has been absolutely key for me. I think the part of the pandemic that has been challenging for me was being confined for a couple months, pretty much not leaving our 2-bedroom apartment, and like having to find ways to expand the space in my mind, like visually. And so just reconnecting with, you know, my meditation practice and that sort of thing has been really critical for self-care.
One of the things I learned is with clients and business partners or employees is they want you to be accessible 24/7, and it's just not realistic. So I try to set limits, and what I've learned is if I say I'm unreachable after 7 p.m. or on Sundays or whatever else, they'll learn to work with me within my schedule. If I don't, then it just becomes a never-ending parade of texts, emails, phone calls. But really, you can teach people how to interact with you, and you should set aside, like I pencil in, I know it sounds funny, I pencil in my off time. I have to, because if I don't, I'll just fill it up with work. So it's okay to put ourselves first, because we can't perform at the level they need us to if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Bleu just said. I have a tendency to be a workaholic, and if I have, you know, if there were 36 hours in a day, I would probably find a way to work a majority of them. And I have had to learn boundaries just for my own sanity, but I also walked into an instant family situation a little bit over a year ago, and having, you know, family dinner on a specific day, or at least one day a week, and watching a movie together, or even just working in the yard together. Like, people have learned that I now have boundaries. So if, you know, if I've been going through like a texting thread and email thread for hours with vendors and ordering and people who need to add or subtract things for whatever reason, there'll come a point, if I know that it's family night, and pencil it in, just like you said, you know, I'll get to a point where I'm like, okay, guys, it's 6 o'clock. I'm starting dinner. It's a family night. I'll see you all tomorrow. I'll hear from you all tomorrow. And that's a firm boundary that I needed for myself, and it's good for the family as well. So it's really nice that people are respecting those boundaries when they set them.
Yeah, I think that's something that is really valuable. We had a bit of a virtual healing circle the first week of the Black Lives Matter riots, and we shared as part part of that, like the pyramid of white supremacy, and then another tool that talked about like values of white supremacy. And one of the things that I was sharing with the group on the call was that one of the values is what we tend to sometimes, like not knowingly as entrepreneurs, like participate in this like hustle culture, grind culture, like don't stop, and really not seeing the way that that supports and upholds like these white supremacist values of capitalism and just putting ourselves and our bodies and our well-being like before anything else, right? Or after everything else. And so I think this idea of like self-care is one that really is, like, to quote like the Black feminist Andrea, like is an act of self-preservation, and the way that we protect ourselves.